What if I told you that one nutrient, often overlooked, often underconsumed, could dramatically reduce muscle loss in as little as 14 days? Not just in athletes, but in anyone, especially those over 30, where age muscle decline quietly begins to accelerate, and not just from a lack of training, but even during periods of stress, injury, poor sleep, or caloric deficit. That nutrient is vitamin D, but not in the way you might think. Most people associate vitamin D with bone health or maybe immune function. But here's what the research shows. Vitamin D is a hormone-like compound that directly influences muscle protein synthesis, mitochondrial function, testosterone regulation, and even fast-twitch muscle fiber preservation. In fact, multiple studies show that correcting a vitamin D deficiency can lead to measurable increases in muscle strength and preservation, even without additional training. One study from the University of Birmingham found that after just 14 days of vitamin D repletion, participants experienced a significant increase in muscle fiber size and contraction strength, especially in type 2 fibers, the ones responsible for speed, power, and metabolic protection. That's crucial, because it's not just about looking fit. Muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of longevity, cognitive resilience, metabolic health, and injury recovery. So if you've been struggling with muscle fatigue, slower recovery, unexplained weakness, or stalled progress in the gym, the issue might not be your willpower, your workouts, or even your protein intake. It might be what your brain and body are missing at a cellular level. In this episode, we're going to explore how vitamin D influences muscle preservation at the molecular level, what's happening in your brain and hormones when vitamin D levels are low, the link between sunlight, circadian rhythm, and anabolic signaling, how to test, correct, and optimize your vitamin D safely and effectively, what form, timing, and dosage protocols deliver real results, and most importantly, a 14-day protocol you can implement starting today. Let's dig into the neuroscience, physiology, and performance tools that make this simple molecule one of the most underestimated keys to long-term strength of body and mind. When you hear vitamin D, your brain probably jumps to bones or maybe immune health. But here's the truth. Vitamin D is not just a vitamin. It functions more like a hormone, and your body treats it that way. Technically, vitamin D is a serosteroid hormone, meaning it's structurally similar to steroid hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and cortisol. Once produced in the skin via UVB light or consumed in supplement form, vitamin D is converted into its active form, calcitriol, by the liver and kidneys. And it's this active form that enters cells and binds to the vitamin D receptor, VDR, a transcription factor present in over 30 different tissues, including your muscles, brain, and immune cells. Why does this matter? Because when calcitriol binds to the VDR, it doesn't just float around doing minor maintenance. It literally enters the nucleus of your cells and turns genes on and off, regulating over 1,000 genes, many of which are directly involved in muscle protein synthesis, inflammation control, insulin sensitivity, and mitochondrial function. Here's what the research shows. In a landmark study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, researchers found that muscle tissue has dense concentrations of VDRs. The more active these receptors are, meaning the more vitamin D is available to bind to them, the higher the rate of muscle cell proliferation and repair. Conversely, low vitamin D means fewer active receptors, sluggish regeneration, and faster muscle degradation. Think of the VDR as a lock and vitamin D as the key. Without enough keys, the locks stay shut. The genes responsible for growth, recovery, and energy efficiency don't get activated. Even more compelling is what we see in older adults. A study from the University of Zurich found that vitamin D supplementation in elderly individuals led to improved muscle strength, balance, and reduced fall risk. Not because of any change in activity level, but because their muscle cells became more responsive at a genetic level. That's hormone level regulation, not basic nutrition. Have you ever felt like your workouts weren't landing, like you're doing the work, but not seeing the strength or performance returns you expect? It's possible your muscle cells are simply not in an anabolic state. because the molecular machinery that controls growth isn't being switched on. This is especially common in people who spend most of their time indoors, live in northern latitudes with low winter sun, have darker skin tones, which naturally blocks UVB, are over the age of 30 when natural vitamin D production declines, are under high stress, which interestingly increases the breakdown of vitamin D in the liver. So the real question isn't, are you getting enough vitamin D for bone health? It's, are you activating your anabolic genes at the level your body needs to maintain strength, performance, and recovery? This reframe is crucial because when you treat vitamin D as a hormone, with proper testing, timing, and optimization, you stop thinking of it as a support and start using it as a lever for performance and protection. A simple tool to apply is this. If you haven't tested your vitamin D levels in the last 6 months, get a 25O OHD blood test. It's the only way to know where you stand. Aim for blood levels between 40 and 60 N/ml for optimal muscle and immune function, not just the normal 20 to 30 N/ml range often used in lab references, which is based on preventing rickets, not optimizing performance. In the next section, we'll explore how vitamin D influences the exact type of muscle fibers you lose first, and how, in just 2 weeks, you can help preserve them with the right stimulus. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to lose strength faster than size as they age? Their arms still look decent, but they can't push, lift, or sprint like they used to. That's not just aging, that's selective muscle fiber atrophy. And it hits hard if you're not protecting against it. The muscle fibers you lose first are called type 2 fibers, also known as fast twitch fibers. These are the power generators, the fibers that allow you to sprint, jump, lift explosively, and maintain metabolic resilience. And here's the kicker. Once they're gone, they're incredibly hard to rebuild. What's fascinating, and what many people don't realize, is that vitamin D plays a central role in preserving and activating these fibers. In a study published in Osteoporosis International, older adults with vitamin D deficiency showed marked atrophy in type 2 fibers compared to those with sufficient levels. But the real breakthrough came from a randomized controlled trial out of the University of Birmingham. Participants with low vitamin D levels were given a controlled dose for 14 days. The result? A statistically significant increase in type 2 muscle fiber diameter and contractile strength, all without changes in training. The muscles simply started functioning more effectively. How is that possible? Because vitamin D acts like a biochemical switch for myogenic differentiation, the process by which satellite cells, muscle stem cells, mature into functioning muscle tissue. Type 2 fibers are particularly rich in vitamin D receptors, making them uniquely sensitive to this hormonal signal. So if your levels are low, these fibers go offline. They become sluggish, prone to atrophy, and slow to recover after stress or strain. But with optimal levels, they become more responsive to training stimuli and more resilient during periods of inactivity, like travel, injury, illness, or caloric restriction. Let's get practical. If you're doing strength training but your vitamin D is low, you might feel like you're hitting a wall, especially when trying to build or maintain power. Part of your neuromuscular system isn't firing at full capacity because the hormonal environment isn't supporting the work. Here's a simple tool to apply. Track your performance on explosive movements like vertical jumps, sprints, or heavy lifts under 5 reps. If your strength output feels flatter than usual, and you haven't changed training variables or sleep, it's time to test your vitamin D. Now, what's exciting is that the muscle-preserving effect of vitamin D appears to kick in within just 10 to 14 days of repletion. But it's not just about popping a pill. You need to combine supplementation with neuromuscular activation, meaning stimulate those fast twitch fibers with short, high effort sets. Think 3 and 5 reps at 80-90% effort, or short duration sprint intervals. This tells your body, these fibers matter, don't shut them down. And vitamin D tells your cells, here's the hormonal support to keep them growing. If you've found this helpful so far, consider subscribing. We dive deep into these kinds of science-backed performance tools every week, and every protocol is designed to help you build a stronger, smarter, more resilient body and mind. So, How do you know if your type 2 fibers are fading? One sign is a loss of power without a loss of size. You still have muscle mass, but suddenly can't sprint, jump, or push heavy loads like you used to. Another red flag, slower reaction time and reduced balance, since type 2 fibers also support fast postural corrections. But the good news is this: with proper vitamin D levels and targeted neuromuscular training, you can reclaim these fibers even well into your 40S, 50S, or beyond. You can be doing all the right things, lifting consistently, eating clean, even sleeping fairly well, and still feel like your progress is stalled, your energy is off, and your mood is unstable. Often the root cause isn't overtraining or under-recovery, it's hormonal disruption triggered by low vitamin D. Here's what the research shows. When vitamin D levels fall below optimal, typically under 30 m/ml, your body enters a kind of low-grade systemic stress. This affects not just your muscles, but also your hormones, mitochondria, and even your brain chemistry. Let's start with hormones. Vitamin D plays a critical role in testosterone production, especially in men. A study from the Medical University of Graz in Austria found that men who supplemented with vitamin D for 1 year saw significant increases in total and free testosterone levels compared to a placebo group. Why? Because vitamin D enhances the function of Leydig cells in the testes, the very cells responsible for testosterone synthesis. And testosterone isn't just about libido or muscle mass. It drives motivation, energy, aggression in a healthy sense, and recovery from exercise. Without it, you lose your edge. So if your vitamin D is low, your body's entire anabolic signal chain gets disrupted, like a symphony missing its conductor. The brain is affected too. Low vitamin D has been strongly associated with mood dysregulation, cognitive fog, and even depression. It modulates the production of dopamine and serotonin, the neurotransmitters responsible for motivation and emotional stability. That's why people often report feeling more alive after spending time in sunlight. It's not just the warmth, it's the neurochemical activation that occurs when vitamin D synthesis is triggered through UVB exposure. And if that's not enough, low vitamin D increases inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha, which interfere with muscle repair, delay recovery, and worsen insulin sensitivity. That means slower gains, longer DOMs, and higher fat storage, even at similar calorie intake. Have you ever felt like your body was inflamed, but you couldn't explain why? Like your joints are achy, your recovery is slow, and your sleep doesn't feel It could be that your internal environment is pro-inflammatory, driven in part by a hormonal signal that's gone missing. Here's a simple tool to apply. If you're dealing with a mix of low motivation, soft muscle tone, slower recovery, and poor sleep, get your vitamin D checked alongside your testosterone and HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. This combo will give you a snapshot of your anabolic capacity and inflammatory load. And it's not just men who suffer. In women, low vitamin D is linked with decreased estrogen synthesis, irregular cycles, increased PMS symptoms, and lower strength output during the luteal phase of the cycle. In both sexes, the underlying mechanism is the same. Without enough vitamin D, the endocrine system underperforms, and your cells become less efficient at creating the hormones that drive performance, recovery, and emotional regulation. If your body feels like it's working harder to achieve the same results, it probably is. Not because you're broken, but because one key regulator of your biology is missing from the equation. The empowering part, this is fixable, and often the improvements happen quickly. In several studies, correcting vitamin D levels led to noticeable improvements in mood, recovery, and training output within 2 to 4 weeks. Next, we'll dive into how sunlight, the most natural source of vitamin D, ties into your circadian rhythm, testosterone cycle, and muscle-building pathways, and why just 10 minutes of strategic morning light might be the simplest high-leverage tool you're not using yet. There's something primal about stepping into the morning sun. You feel more awake, more grounded, more alive. But what's actually happening in your brain and body during that moment goes far beyond mood. It's a neuroendocrine cascade that sets the tone for everything from muscle recovery to testosterone output. Let's connect the dots. When sunlight, specifically UVB radiation, hits your skin, it converts 7-dehydrocholesterol into pre-vitamin D3, which is then transformed into active vitamin D by your liver and kidneys. That part's well known. But what's often missed is how sunlight simultaneously triggers other performance-enhancing systems. For starters, morning sunlight enters the eyes and activates specialized cells in the retina called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, IPRGCs. These cells send a direct signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, the master clock of your brain, which then regulates cortisol rhythms, melatonin suppression, and even testosterone timing. Here's what the research shows. A study published in Hormone and Metabolic Research found that men who were exposed to natural sunlight in the early part of the day had 30% higher testosterone levels than those with minimal sunlight exposure. The same study linked UV exposure to increased luteinizing hormone, LH, the pituitary hormone that signals the testes to produce testosterone. But it gets even more interesting. UV exposure also increases dopamine production in the retina and midbrain, which enhances motivation, drive, and focus. Dopamine isn't just a feel-good chemical, it's a motor planning neurotransmitter that directly influences your willingness to move, train, and perform. So what does this have to do with muscle? Everything. Vitamin D, testosterone, dopamine, and cortisol rhythms are all entrained by light exposure. When you anchor your circadian rhythm with morning sunlight, you're not just supporting hormone balance, you're amplifying the signals your body uses to build, preserve, and repair muscle. Here's a simple protocol to apply. Within 30-60 minutes of waking, get 5 to 15 minutes of direct sunlight, without sunglasses, windows, or filters. If you live in a low-light region or it's winter, consider using a 10,000 lux light therapy box. For 10-20 minutes, this triggers the same circadian and endocrine pathways, even without you. And if you're training in the afternoon or evening, consider a short walk in the sun post-workout. Not just for vitamin D, but because natural light exposure enhances parasympathetic recovery, rest and digest mode, helping you wind down, reduce cortisol, and shift into muscle repair. Have you ever noticed how you sleep better after a day spent outdoors? That's not a coincidence. It's the result of sunlight synchronizing your internal clocks, optimizing melatonin production at night, and setting the stage for better muscle recovery during deep sleep. If this kind of science-backed insight is helping you rethink how your environment shapes your biology, consider subscribing. This channel is built to give you practical tools rooted in neuroscience and performance physiology. No fluff, just evidence and action. So here's the big idea. Your muscle building state is not just created in the gym. It's created the moment your eyes open in the morning and receive the right light signal. And with just a few minutes of intentional sunlight exposure each day, you're not only making vitamin D, you're activating the entire hormonal and neurological sequence that protects muscle, boosts energy, and stabilizes mood. By now, you understand that vitamin D isn't just a nice to have, it's a master regulator of muscle, mood, and metabolic health. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't actually know where their levels stand. And without accurate data, you're guessing, not optimizing. So let's fix that. The first step is to test your serum 25-hydroxyvitamin D. That's the biomarker most reflective of your stored vitamin D status. This is what your doctor will measure in a standard blood panel, and it's what researchers use in nearly every major vitamin D study. Here's what the numbers mean. Below 20 ng/ml equals clinically deficient, 20-30 ng/ml equals suboptimal, common in winter urban areas, or darker skin tones, 30-50 ng/ml equals adequate but often not optimal for performance. 50-70 ng/ml equals optimal range for most people aiming for physical and cognitive enhancement. Above 100 ng/ml equals potentially toxic. Avoid overshooting. Now, let's talk about how to get there safely and effectively. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that a daily dose of 4,000 IU of vitamin D3 is both safe and effective for raising most people into the optimal range, especially those starting from a deficiency. But the real key isn't just how much you take, it's how well your body absorbs and activates it. Vitamin D is fat soluble, which means it's best absorbed when taken with a meal containing fat. This can be as simple as pairing your supplement with eggs, avocado, olive oil, or fatty fish, but absorption is only step one. Your body also needs several cofactors to activate and utilize vitamin D effectively. Here are the big three. Magnesium. Without adequate magnesium, your liver and kidneys can't convert vitamin D into its active form, calcitriol. Magnesium also plays a direct role in muscle relaxation and recovery. Aim for 300-400 milligrams per day from magnesium glycinate or citrate, especially if you're supplementing D3. Vitamin K2, MK7 form. Vitamin D increases calcium absorption, which is good for bones and muscle contraction, but without K2, that calcium can deposit in soft tissue or arteries. K2 directs calcium into bones and teeth, preventing vascular calcification. A dose of 100 to 200 mcg daily is ideal. Zinc. Zinc supports the binding of vitamin D to its receptors, especially in muscle tissue. It also enhances testosterone synthesis and immune function. Zinc picolinate or citrate at 1530 mcg per day can support this pathway. Here's a simple daily protocol to consider. Morning or midday, 4 IU D3 plus 200 milligrams K2 plus 15 magnesium, 300-400 milligrams in the evening to support sleep, recovery, and D3 metabolism. Always check your levels 8-12 weeks after beginning supplementation. This ensures you're hitting the sweet spot, not underdoing it, not overdoing it. And remember, no supplement will work in isolation. The most powerful changes happen when you stack smart behaviors, light exposure, resistance training, nutrient timing on top of a solid biochemical foundation. If this information has helped bring clarity to how your body actually works and how to support it, drop a comment or like below. It helps us grow this science-driven community and deliver even more value to you. Now, we'll bring it all together. How to integrate vitamin D into a broader system of muscle maintenance, peak cognition, and hormonal balance, especially during periods of stress, aging, or injury. Let's zoom out. Everything we've talked about, hormone balance, neuromuscular function, recovery speed, mood stability, is part of a larger system. And that system has one job: to help your body adapt, repair, and stay strong, especially in the face of stress. Vitamin D is not just a player in this system, it's a keystone regulator. And where this becomes most important isn't just during peak performance, but during the moments when your body is under load, physically, emotionally, or with age. Well, let's look at aging. One of the most consistent predictors of frailty in older adults is sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength. But here's what's rarely discussed. Sarcopenia doesn't begin in old age. It begins as early as your 30s and 40s, accelerated by hormonal decline, reduced activity, and micronutrient deficiency. A longitudinal study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that individuals with higher vitamin D levels experience significantly less muscle atrophy and better functional mobility over time, even when controlling for exercise. Why? Because vitamin D maintains anabolic sensitivity, your muscle's ability to respond to protein intake, resistance training, and recovery stimuli. In other words, with enough vitamin D, your body doesn't just hold on to muscle, it stays primed to build it. Now think about injury. Whether it's a torn tendon, a strained back, or even post-surgical recovery, your body enters a state of catabolism, breaking tissue down in order to heal. If your vitamin D is low during this window, muscle wasting accelerates, healing slows, and inflammation lingers. A study in bone and joint research found that patients with low vitamin D levels had significantly poorer outcomes after orthopedic surgery, including longer recovery times and greater muscle atrophy. The mechanism? Vitamin D supports immune modulation, tissue regeneration, and protein synthesis, all essential for healing. Now let's talk about stress. Chronic psychological stress elevates catabolic to muscle. It also disrupts sleep, decreases testosterone, and impairs insulin sensitivity, a recipe for rapid muscle loss and mood instability. Vitamin D acts as a buffer to this system. It helps regulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, GHPA, axis, keeping cortisol within adaptive ranges. It also improves serotonin synthesis and dopamine signaling, which enhances emotional resilience and keeps you mentally sharp, even during pressure. So whether you're aging, recovering, or simply going through a demanding season, Vitamin D helps your body stay in an anabolic, adaptive state rather than a catabolic, depleted one. Here's a simple integration framework. Train 3 to 5x per week with resistance-based protocols. Expose yourself to natural light daily, especially in the morning. Supplement with D3, 4,000 IU plus K2 plus magnesium plus zinc, especially in winter or low sunlight environment. Eat a protein-rich, nutrient-dense diet that includes healthy fats. Prioritize sleep and emotional regulation, both of which are supported by adequate vitamin D levels. None of this has to be extreme. The real power comes from consistency. Just like compound interest, a small input, like 10 minutes of sunlight or a morning supplement, compounds over time into stronger muscle, clearer thinking, and more emotional bandwidth. This is the edge most people miss. Not more supplements, not more effort, just smarter alignment with the biology you already have. In the conclusion, we'll pull all of this together, the research, the tools, and the personal challenge that can help you take control of your muscle health and mindset in just the next 14 days. Let's step back and connect the full picture. You've just seen how one micronutrient, vitamin D, holds a surprisingly powerful key to protecting your muscle, regulating your mood, sharpening your focus, and even shaping your hormonal landscape. Not because it's magical, but because it's foundational. Vitamin D is not a supplement you take, it's a system you support. A system that helps you resist breakdown and stay adaptive in the face of stress, aging, or physical demand. And it only takes 14 days of focused action to begin restoring it to optimal levels. Here's what the research and real-world data make clear. Vitamin D isn't just a bone nutrient. It controls the expression of over 1,000 genes, including those related to muscle growth, protein synthesis, inflammation, and hormone regulation. Deficiency is common and silent. Up to 42% of US adults have suboptimal levels. You often don't know until fatigue, weakness, low mood, or muscle loss becomes hard to ignore. Light is your first medicine. Sunlight in the first 30-60 minutes after waking doesn't just make you feel more alert. It kicks off a cascade of hormonal signals that support testosterone, dopamine, and circadian stability. Supplementation works, but only if you combine it with the right timing, cofactors, and dosage. D3 paired with magnesium, K2, and zinc creates the full biological support your body needs. The effects are fast. Studies show meaningful increases in testosterone, strength output, and recovery within 2 to 4 weeks of correcting a deficiency. But here's the real takeaway. You don't need to overhaul your entire life to build a stronger body or clearer mind. You just need to shift the levers that move everything else. And vitamin D, through sunlight, supplementation, and system alignment, is one of those levers. So here's your challenge. For the next 14 days, commit to 3 simple behaviors. Morning sunlight, get 5-15 minutes of direct outdoor light within an hour of waking. Daily supplementation. Take 4,000 IU of D3 with K2, magnesium, and a fat enhancer. 1 strength session every 48 hours. Resistance training is how you signal your body to use that hormonal environment and build instead of break down. Track how you feel, how you recover, how your energy holds up in the afternoon. These signals are feedback from your nervous system. And most people notice the difference sooner than they expect. Because when your biology is aligned, you don't need to push so hard. You just need to stop blocking the systems that want to work for you. If this speech has helped you better understand the deeper mechanics of muscle, motivation, and mood, I invite you to subscribe. This channel is built to bring you the kind of science that actually changes your day, not just theories, but tools. And if you found value here, leave a like or drop a comment below, not just for the algorithm, but because it helps grow a community of people who care about mastering their body, mind, and nervous system. You're not just here to survive, you're here to thrive. And it doesn't take a full transformation to begin. Just 1 vitamin, 14 days, and the decision to stop losing muscle and start reclaiming your momentum. Let's build from here.